Welcome to All in All. Here on the Deep Dive, we unpack articles, research, and notes, pulling out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight, all custom-tailored for you, our curious listener. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into the extraordinary life and mind of one of the 20th century's most brilliant and unconventional thinkers, Richard Feynman. He was often described as a magician in physics, but his life story, filled with playful mischief, profound love, and unyielding integrity, is just as compelling as his scientific contributions. Our mission today is to explore the origins of his genius, understand the lasting significance and impact of his work, trace the evolution of his revolutionary ideas, and finally, discover the practical relevance of his unique approach to the world. So let's peel back the layers of this incredible character.
Indeed. Feynman's journey, it's quite something. From a child who questioned absolutely everything to a Nobel laureate who, basically redefined our understanding of reality. It's a testament to the power of curiosity and really an independent mind. We'll trace the development of his unconventional thinking from his earliest experiments, through his groundbreaking contributions to quantum physics, his crucial role during wartime, and ultimately his enduring legacy as a philosopher of science and, frankly, a Puritanist educator. What's truly fascinating here, is the continuous interplay between his deeply personal experiences and his groundbreaking scientific pursuits.
That's a powerful observation. It really underscores how those early experiences can shape, a lifetime of inquiry. And for Feynman, it all started remarkably early.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by the sheer ingenuity he displayed even as a child. Can you give us an example of his very first forays into invention?
Certainly. One of the most telling anecdotes, I think, is his elaborate home burglar alarm system. Imagine his parents trying to quietly check on him late one night, opening the door to his room, and suddenly, just this tremendous bell deafens them. Beong, bong, bong.
Wow.
And young Richard, far from being startled, just jumped out of bed, apparently yelling, "It worked! It worked!"
Classic.
Right. This wasn't just a child's toy. It was a functioning system designed to solve a problem he had identified. And this analytical approach wasn't limited to alarms. Even as a preteen, maybe 11 or 12, his reputation as a boy wonder grew from his ability to diagnose and fix radios.
Radios, really?
Yeah. And he didn't just replace parts, you see. He'd sit there thinking, sometimes for hours, tracing the circuits in his mind until he understood the fault. He fixed them not by rote, but by understanding how they should work.
That methodical first principles approach, even at such a young age, it's striking.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't always a solo endeavor, was it? He brought others into his early scientific world, sometimes in quite a mischievous way.
Not at all solo. He actually hired his younger sister, Joan, as his lab assistant.
Hired her.
Yep. The payment, 4 cents a week.
4 cents.
Her duties, however, were less about careful observation and more about, shall we say, participating in the experiment.
Oh boy.
This included putting her finger in a spark gap for the amusement of his friends, which, while a bit mischievous and maybe not exactly OSHA-approved today,
Absolutely not.
it really highlights his hands-on, playful, and deeply experimental spirit from the very beginning. For Feynman, science was never some dry, abstract pursuit. It was about getting your hands dirty and, seeing what happened.
That sounds like a truly formative experience. And his curiosity extended beyond electronics into the natural world, didn't it? He had an almost childlike wonder when observing nature, but coupled with a rigorous experimental mindset.
Absolutely. His fascination wasn't limited to man-made gadgets. He recounted with vivid detail the excitement he felt upon discovering an ant and aphid interaction in his backyard. His father had described this symbiotic relationship to him, but to see it firsthand, magnified by his crude microscope, the ant patting the aphid, and then a glistening ball of honeydew forming, he called it a gorgeous thing.
Wow.
This direct observation spurred him to conduct detailed experiments on ant behavior right there in his home laboratory. He used microscope slides and sugar, observing how ants navigated and communicated. He concluded, quite definitively actually, that ants had no sense of geometry and left a non-directional trail for others to follow. He later contrasted this with Brazilian leaf-cutting ants, whom he observed could tell direction.
So he was already comparing and contrasting even then.
Exactly. This was a classic example of his early scientific method. Direct observation, forming hypotheses, designing simple, repeatable experiments, and drawing conclusions based on empirical evidence. This wasn't just cute childhood curiosity, it was the foundation of a scientific mind that always sought to understand from first principles, dissecting complex phenomena into observable, repeatable interactions, a method he later applied to the most abstract quantum problems.
It's incredible how those fundamental ways of thinking solidified so early. And much of that seems to stem directly from his parents, particularly his father. What was the nature of Melville Feynman's influence on young Richard?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, a significant, almost prophetic aspect of his early development was the profound parental influence, especially from his father, Melville. There's a widely recounted family legend that Melville allegedly declared that if his baby was a boy, he would be a scientist.
That's like that. Declared it.
So the story goes. And he didn't just declare it, he actively fostered that development. For instance, he would lay out blue and white floor tiles in specific mathematical patterns.
Floor tiles.
Yeah, not to teach formal arithmetic, but to coax young Richard into recognizing visual rhythms and numerical sequences. He called this revealing the shadow of mathematics, cultivating a deep, intuitive appreciation for the patterns underlying the world long before formal equations were introduced.
So pattern recognition, not just numbers.
Precisely. It wasn't about rote learning, but about instilling a sense of wonder and recognition of the inherent order in the universe.
And Melville's encouragement wasn't just about abstract patterns, was it? He fostered boundless curiosity in every way he could.
Exactly. He provided Richard with unrestricted access to the Encyclopedia Britannica, which Richard famously devoured, consuming its contents with an insatiable appetite.
I bet he did.
He also regularly took him to the American Museum of Natural History, which truly ignited his fascination with subjects like dinosaurs and, crucially, the atomic idea. Feynman would later propose that if all scientific knowledge were lost in a cataclysm, the single most important statement to preserve, the most potent distillation of human knowledge, would be, all things are made of atoms.
That's powerful.
And that insight, planted by his father through those early museum visits and encyclopedic explorations, became a cornerstone of his worldview.
His father also had a unique approach to critical thinking, didn't he? Something that really pushed Richard to question assumptions.
This was arguably one of Melville's most profound gifts to his son, the Martian perspective. He encouraged Richard to step outside himself and approach problems from novel viewpoints.
A Martian perspective. How does that work?
Well, for example, he might ask, how would the problem of falling asleep look to a Martian who never slept? This wasn't a trick question. It was a tool to break free from conventional assumptions, to see familiar phenomena with fresh eyes, and to approach them as if encountering them for the first time. This radical independence of thought, this ability to strip away preconceived notions and ask fundamental questions, became a hallmark of Feynman's later scientific approach and was absolutely crucial for his groundbreaking work.
So with that incredible foundation of curiosity laid in childhood, how did Feynman's unique mind fare when it entered the more structured and sometimes, let's face it, rigid world of academia? Navigating early academic environments surely presented its own set of challenges.
It did, and it really highlights the societal landscape of the time. When he started at MIT in the 1930s, there was rampant anti-Semitism in American academia, a sad reality.
Right, you wouldn't necessarily think about that now.
No, but it was a major factor then. Jewish students often faced significant barriers. This led him to join Phi Beta Delta, a Jewish fraternity, because other fraternities simply wouldn't even consider Jewish students for membership. Despite his personal lack of religious belief, he was a lifelong atheist, he found an incredibly supportive community there, a place where intellect and camaraderie thrived without prejudice.
That's a stark reminder of the challenges of the era. His academic path itself sounds quite unconventional, even for a budding genius.
It was. For instance, his fraternity brothers, perhaps recognizing his unusual intellect, advised him to take the first-year calculus exam before even starting MIT.
Before starting. Bold move.
And he passed it, which was fantastic advice, saved him from a full course. But he initially struggled with his academic choices, changing majors from electrical engineering to physics. Part of the struggle stemmed from his profound dissatisfaction with traditional mathematics. He found mathematics that felt disconnected from real-world application to be lousy, and universally lousy in textbook.
Lousy. It's blunt.
That was Feynman. He famously asked his department chairman what mathematics was good for and received a classic, unhelpful academic reply about actuarial probabilities.
Oh, dear.
Feynman needed his math to do something, you know. to describe nature, not to exist in some theoretical vacuum. This early dismissal of abstract, unapplied math would define his later, more intuitive and physically grounded approach to theoretical physics.
That's a classic academic story. It seems the fraternity did more than just provide intellectual refuge, though. They even made efforts to broaden their members' social skills, which is a fascinating glimpse into MIT culture at the time.
Oh, indeed. The fraternity had compulsory tea and mandatory attendance at dances, almost a social engineering experiment in itself.
Compulsory tea.
Really? Seriously. And for those members who struggled with social interaction, and let's be honest, MIT in the 30s likely had its share of socially awkward geniuses. The older boys even arranged dates.
They arranged dates?
Yep. This offers a fascinating glimpse into his early social development. It shows a side of MIT culture that recognized the importance of holistic development, even if it meant a gentle, or maybe not so gentle, nudge towards social engagement for their more academically focused students.
And speaking of social connections, this brings us to a deeply profound personal connection in his life that truly shaped him, his relationship with Arlene Greenbaum. Their love story unfolded amidst immense adversity.
It's one of the most poignant aspects of his early life. Arlene was suffering from tuberculosis, which was a devastating disease at the time.
Just terrible.
And when Feynman, then a brilliant graduate student, sought to marry her, the university administration actually refused to permit it.
Refused? Why?
Their reasoning was chillingly pragmatic. The perceived financial and emotional responsibilities, and critically the high risk of contagion. Feynman was absolutely dismayed by this rigid, unsympathetic response, a stark contrast to the deep emotional bond he shared with Arlene.
That sounds heartbreakingly bureaucratic. But they were determined, weren't they? How did they manage to overcome such obstacles?
They absolutely were. Their poignant wedding ceremony took place in a city office on Staten Island. A stark and lonely affair, really. No family or friends, just two strangers as witnesses.
Just the two of them and strangers?
Pretty much. And the fear of infection was so pervasive that, out of an abundance of caution, he didn't even kiss her directly on the lips. After the brief ceremony, he immediately drove her to a charity hospital in Browns Mills, New Jersey, where she would live out her remaining years.
My goodness, that's commitment.
It was a profound act of love and commitment against impossible odds.
And even with that physical separation, their connection somehow grew stronger through correspondence. How did they maintain that lifeline during such a difficult time, especially with wartime censors involved?
Their unique and playful correspondence became an absolutely vital lifeline during Arlene's illness, particularly as the war intensified and he was assigned to the Manhattan Project. They filled their letters with intricate codes, elaborate jigsaw puzzles, and an acid sense of fun, as he called it, to evade the ever-present wartime censors.
Codes and puzzles, like spy stuff.
Sort of. Arlene, for example, once sent him a letter disassembled in a little sack from a do-it-yourself jigsaw puzzle kit, forcing him to reconstruct her thoughts.
That's amazing.
This wasn't just playful. It demonstrated his creative problem-solving and deep emotional connection, even in the most personal and challenging circumstances. He even thought about sending booby-trapped letters.
Booby-trapped?
Yeah, like with ink spray if opened wrong, but he didn't actually do it. But tragically, her later death, still in her 20s, had a deep, almost burning out effect on him, profoundly impacting his emotional state and, for a time, his capacity for intense research.
That transition from such intense personal struggle to monumental scientific breakthroughs really brings us to our second segment, the quantum leap redefining physics. After the war, the state of quantum electrodynamics, or QED, was, in a word, in crisis.
It truly was a theoretical quagmire. In the early post-war years, quantum electrodynamics, which was meant to describe how light and matter interact, was just burdened by seemingly intractable problems.
What kind of problems?
Theoreticians were grappling with what they called infinite integrals and other mathematical flaws. Essentially, when they tried to calculate physical quantities, their equations kept spitting out nonsensical infinities instead of finite measurable numbers.
Infinities. The answer was just infinity.
Pretty much. It was like trying to measure the length of a table and getting infinity inches clearly. The mathematical framework was fundamentally broken, leaving theoreticians feeling in disgrace and deeply frustrated.
So if the theory was broken, what was the turning point that forced a reckoning?
This was a pivotal moment, the Shelter Island Conference in 1947. This gathering brought together America's leading physicists, and it's where the experimentalists truly overshadowed the theoreticians.
The experiments were ahead of the theory.
Way ahead. Discoveries like Willis-Lamb's lamb shift a tiny, subtle shift in the energy levels of hydrogen atoms, but so precisely measured, and other precise measurements of the electron's magnetic moment unequivocally show that the existing quantum theory was incomplete. It was a clear signal that the old ways were insufficient, and a critical need for new theoretical approaches to reconcile the elegant but flawed theory with experimental reality was paramount.
And this is where it gets truly revolutionary. Feynman introduced his audacious and entirely new approach, developed during his time at Princeton. It was a radical departure from traditional quantum mechanics. How did he break from convention?
Well, he fundamentally mistrusted the conventional approach of relying on wave functions that were smeared out probabilistically, which he felt obscured the underlying physics. He sought a cleaner, more direct method, one that aligned with his intuition of how nature actually behaves.
He didn't like the math being used.
He felt the existing methods were cumbersome and didn't offer a clear picture. He wanted something more direct.
So what was his core concept? How did he visualize a particle's journey in a way no one else had?
His core concept was the path integral, a truly mind-bending idea. Instead of imagining a particle moving from one point to another along a single, definite trajectory,
Like we normally think of it.
right, Feynman proposed something far more radical. The particle effectively takes every conceivable path, simultaneously straight lines, zigzags, looping back on itself, even absurd, impossible paths through spacetime.
Every path at the same time.
Effectively, yes. The theory, then, sums the contributions of every conceivable path to determine the probability of an event. Imagine thinking of a journey not as a single determined path, but as a symphony of every possible route, however absurd, all contributing to the final destination. Mathematically, this involves a complex integral encompassing every possible coordinate, leading to an abstract quantity called the probability amplitude, which is then used to calculate the actual probability of an event occurring.
Wow. That's a lot to wrap your head around.
It transformed how we visualize and calculate the very fabric of reality, turning seemingly impossible problems into solvable equations.
That's a truly profound shift in perspective.
Huh.
How was this reckless style, as it was sometimes called, received by the established physics community, especially the famous Pocono meeting?
His initial reception was, shall we say, a mix of bewilderment and awe. Feynman presented his ideas with a reckless style, appearing to some strangely ignorant of the literature.
Because he hadn't read it.
Often, yeah. He often didn't cite previous works because he had simply worked everything out for himself from first principles. Yet, at the Pocono meeting in 1948, his approach began to find what had eluded all of his elders. His mentor, John Wheeler, famously called it a starkly majestic tapestry and a unifying principle that would either explain everything or explain nothing. High stakes.
Explain everything or nothing. Wow.
However, not everyone was immediately convinced. The legendary Wolfgang Pauli, for example, was initially very skeptical, repeatedly asking if it was unitary, meaning was it mathematically consistent and did it preserve probability. This was a deep concern about its mathematical rigor.
Despite that initial skepticism, his contributions were so significant they spawned a whole new visual language in physics. Feynman diagrams, what makes them so revolutionary?
What's truly fascinating here is how his abstract mathematical vision provided an intuitive graphic representation that allowed physicists, including students, to visualize and perform incredibly complex calculations in quantum field theory, making the field vastly more accessible.
So they weren't just pictures, they were tools.
Exactly. These now iconic Feynman diagrams provided computation to the masses. Before them, these calculations were unwieldy and incredibly prone to error.
Can you break down what these diagrams actually show? Like the lines and squiggles?
Of course. They are essentially a simple visual shorthand. They simplify particle calculations with basic components. Vertices, which are points where particles interact, often shown with 3 lines in QED, representing 1 bosonic particle like a photon and 2 fermionic particles like electrons.
Okay, interaction points. Got it.
Then there are propagators, which are simply lines representing particles moving between these vertices. The more complex the interaction, the more vertices and lines you add. And the number of vertices in a diagram actually corresponds to the order of the term in the perturbation series expansion of the transition amplitude.
Whoa, okay, slow down. Perturbation series.
Right, sorry. Essentially, for really complicated particle interactions, physicists often break them down into simpler, smaller steps. Each vertex in a Feynman diagram represents one of these fundamental interaction steps. More vertices mean a more complex, more refined calculation, like adding more brushstrokes to a painting to get a clearer picture of the interaction. This offered a clear and organized way to approach and perform calculations for particle interactions, transforming the field.
That makes sense. A visual way to organize complexity. And despite their eventual widespread adoption, they faced initial skepticism, didn't they? Some prominent figures weren't easily convinced.
That's right. While revolutionary, they weren't immediately embraced by everyone. Some, like Julian Schwinger, who was also working on QED and would share the Nobel Prize with Feynman.
Right, Schwinger.
He viewed them as mere pedagogy, not physics, or even a shell game, implying they were a simplification rather than a deep theoretical advance.
Ouch. A shell game.
Yeah. But the unreasonable power and sheer utility of Feynman's method and diagrams eventually began to take over. This led to widespread adoption and citation in scientific papers, despite that initial skepticism. Even Murray Gell-Mann, who sometimes expressed frustration at the attention Feynman received and was apparently upset by some of Feynman's accounts in his autobiography, acknowledged his undeniable genius and the truly transformative impact of the diagrams on the field. They simply worked, and worked incredibly well.
From the esoteric world of quantum theory, let's shift gears to a period where theoretical brilliance met urgent practical necessity: war, innovation, and problem-solving. Feynman was recruited to the Manhattan Project at Los Alamos, and his role seems to have been far more than just theoretical.
His recruitment was quite deliberate. Oppenheimer himself was keen to bring Feynman on board for theoretical work, recognizing his exceptional problem-solving abilities. While Feynman often downplayed his contributions in his memoirs, his real role was deeper than he liked to suggest. He was often seen as a magician, not just for his physics insights, but for his unique ability to tackle any problem, whether it was designing a new calculation method or, understanding why a door wouldn't open. He was the go-to person when things seemed impossible.
The project's troubleshooter. And his playful defiance of military censors, particularly concerning letters with his ill wife, Arlene, is legendary. This wasn't just rebellion. It was a deeply personal act of intellectual and emotional freedom, wasn't it?
Absolutely. The military censorship at Los Alamos was draconian, monitoring all communications. But Feynman, determined to maintain privacy and inject humor into a grim situation, found ingenious ways around it. He used a complex code with Arlene, often involving inside jokes and obscure references that censors couldn't decipher. He sent letters with holes cut in them or blotches of ink, appearing accidentally damaged but actually conveying hidden messages.
Seriously?
Holes in letters. Yep. And he even disassembled letters into jigsaw puzzles, sending them in small pieces to be reassembled by Arlene, who would then mail them back in correct order, a testament to their shared playful spirit and his creative problem-solving.
That's incredible dedication.
As I mentioned, he even contemplated sending a booby-trapped letter with a tiny spring-loaded device that would spray ink if opened incorrectly, though he ultimately didn't. This demonstrated his constant drive to find clever solutions, even to seemingly mundane problems like censorship, showcasing his rebellious ingenuity and determination to maintain control over his personal life.
That determination manifested in other, more surprising ways, too. The safecracker reputation at Los Alamos is a favorite anecdote of many. How did he become so infamous for that?
It's a truly classic Feynman story. He became notorious for cracking safes across Los Alamos. This wasn't random. He systematically studied the combination locks, recognizing patterns and weaknesses in human behavior.
He studied the locks.
Oh, yeah. He discovered, for example, that many people, when setting combinations, would use numbers that were off by 2 in either direction from a chosen number, or they'd leave the tumbler with a slight wiggle.
Human error, basically.
Exactly. By exploiting these tendencies and the mechanical tolerances of the locks, he dramatically reduced the possibilities from like 1 million down to a mere 8,000. He considered this a respectable accomplishment, despite admitting some instances were due to complete luck.
Some luck involved, too.
His success made him a genuine danger to the security system, forcing everyone, including military personnel, to change their combinations. It perfectly illustrates his analytical mind applied to an unconventional challenge.
And then there's the truly audacious decision he made during the Trinity test, the first atomic bomb test. It sounds like he approached even that terrifying event with a scientist's calculated risk.
He absolutely did. While everyone else was instructed to lie down, face away, and protect their eyes with welder's glass.
Which sounds like good advice.
Right. Feynman chose to watch the first atomic bomb test directly. His only protection was the windshield of a truck.
Just the truck windshield against an atomic bomb.
He had calculated that the primary danger from the blast, apart from the physical shock wave, was ultraviolet rays, and he reasoned correctly that the glass of the truck windshield would block them.
He trusted the physics?
He trusted his calculations. This action perfectly encapsulates his confident, empirical approach to risk assessment, not relying on dogma or fear, but on his own calculations and understanding of physics. He wanted to see it. He described it as so incredibly bright that it turned color from red to orange to yellow and then white.
Beyond the bomb itself, Feynman also made significant and often overlooked contributions to early computing at Los Alamos. What did he observe about the scientists working with those primitive IBM machines?
Well, he had a very keen eye for human behavior and efficiency. He observed that scientists working with the early IBM machines at Los Alamos could become suffering from the computer disease by simply playing with them.
The computer disease, what's that?
He recognized the immense allure of these new machines and how easily they could distract from the main objective if not managed effectively. The novelty could lead to unproductive tinkering rather than focused work, getting lost in the machine itself.
Ah, I see. So how did he address this computer disease and enhance productivity? He's credited with pioneering something we now take for granted.
He did. He essentially invented a precursor to what we now call parallel processing or pipelining. Imagine the sheer frustration of these early computers, slow and single-minded.
Painfully slow, I bet.
Feynman looked at them not as singular machines, but as a system. He invented a clever system for sending 3 different problems through the machine simultaneously using distinct color-coded cards for each.
Color-coded cards?
Yeah.
Simple, but brilliant.
It wasn't just a clever hack, it was a conceptual leap, dramatically increasing productivity and cutting down the time it took to get crucial calculations, which, in the race to build the bomb, was invaluable. He also devised an incredibly efficient method for correcting errors without halting an entire computation. When an error was discovered, it would propagate only a limited distance, allowing for the substitution of small, corrected card decks that would eventually catch up with the main run.
So no starting over from scratch.
Exactly. This was incredibly pragmatic and kept the vital calculations flowing.
So he wasn't just fixing machines or running calculations. He was inventing new methodologies under immense pressure. How did his group deal with unprecedented challenges like the uranium hydride problem?
This was a critical test of their ingenuity. When Edward Teller suggested using uranium hydride in the bomb's design...
Teller, another big name.
Right. It pushed Feynman's group past the limits of their methods of calculating critical masses. The existing theoretical models and computational techniques simply couldn't handle the messy realities and complex interactions this material presented. This forced them to invent new techniques on the fly, moving beyond oversimplified assumptions and confronting the messy realities of the bomb's design. They couldn't rely on textbook solutions. They had to invent their own, in real time, under the most extreme pressure imaginable.
This also highlights his interactions within bureaucracy and his unwavering intellectual integrity. He seems to have had a knack for empowering others, even the lowest-ranking members of the project.
He did. He recognized a significant morale issue among the clever boys from high school who formed the Special Engineer Detachment. These young men were operating the crucial IBM machines.
The ones doing the parallel processing he set up.
Exactly. But they were kept completely in the dark about the purpose of their work, treated as mere cogs in a machine. Feynman understood that a lack of context bred apathy. He convinced Oppenheimer to allow him to give a lecture explaining what we were doing, revealing the larger purpose of their work, the atomic bomb project.
He told them, in that secret environment.
He did. And this simple act transformed their understanding and motivation. They suddenly felt like they were fighting a war. It was a profound demonstration of the power of shared knowledge and transparency in fostering motivation, even in a highly compartmentalized, top-secret environment.
His unconventional engagement with authority was legendary, wasn't it? He seemed to challenge anyone, regardless of their stature, if he felt they weren't making sense.
Absolutely. From his candid feedback to the revered Niels Bohr, a giant in physics, where Feynman bluntly stated, "If the idea looked lousy, I said it looked lousy."
You can't imagine saying that to Bohr.
Right. To his skepticism about Alfred North Whitehead's essential object. In a philosophy seminar he hadn't even read for Feynman consistently challenged authority. His priority was always physical understanding and logical coherence, not deference to status. He was always worried about the physics, not the prestige or the person he was talking to, which made him both admired and at times infuriating to his peers.
And this principled stance extended even to accepting formal honors, which he seemed to actively avoid.
Indeed. He had a long-standing reluctance to accept formal honors. He made repeated attempts to resign from the prestigious National Academy of Sciences, seeing it as an honor that diminished true scientific work, something to be imposed rather than earned.
He tried to resign from the National Academy.
Multiple times. And he famously viewed the Nobel Prize, which he eventually received, as being for shoving a great problem under the carpet.
Wow. So even the Nobel wasn't good enough.
This wasn't false modesty. It implied that even his greatest work felt like a pragmatic, perhaps incomplete solution, rather than a full, deep understanding of the universe's ultimate mysteries. His motivation came from internal curiosity, not external accolades.
That kind of principled candor must have been quite striking, especially when it came to practical matters like research funding.
It was. His directness is perfectly exemplified when a friend working on cosmology, a field whose immediate practical applications are not always obvious, wondered how to explain its relevance to secure funding.
A common problem for scientists.
Definitely. Feynman's blunt reply was classic. There aren't any.
He just said, nope, no applications.
Pretty much. His insistence on utter honesty about scientific work, even if it meant potentially losing financial support, showcased his unwavering commitment to integrity above all else, even when it was politically inconvenient or financially unsound. He believed that science should be pursued for its own sake, for the joy of discovery, and that one should never compromise truth for expediency.
This dedication to unvarnished truth, combined with his boundless curiosity, leads us beautifully into a life of unconventional inquiry. Beyond the world-changing physics and wartime heroics, Feynman's interests didn't confine themselves to the scientific lab.
Yeah.
In fact, his pursuits branched out in incredibly surprising and diverse ways. You might not know, for example, that he indulged a serious passion for drawing.
It's true. And apparently he initially felt quite embarrassed about his drawing skills, but was encouraged to attend classes. He developed a particular fondness for drawing nudes, appreciating the beauty of the human form.
Drawing nudes. The famous physicist.
Yes. And surprisingly, he even exhibited his work, selling a piece titled The Magnetic Field of the Sun.
He sold his art.
He did. And in one memorable instance, he hired a Playboy playmate to pose for him.
Okay, now that's a story.
And during the session, he found himself teaching her to please stand up because she was so elegant. This encapsulates his approach, finding beauty and a new dimension to explore in everything, even outside of physics. It shows his commitment to truly seeing and understanding whether it was a subatomic particle or a human figure.
His artistic pursuits weren't just visual either. He delved deeply into music, mastering percussion.
Yes, his journey into music, specifically mastering percussion, is another remarkable facet of his eclectic curiosity. He learned to play bongos at Los Alamos, finding a meditative rhythm in them.
Bongos at Los Alamos, amidst the bomb project.
Seems so. Later, he became incredibly adept at imitating complex African drum music, famously fooling people in a game called Africa or Ithaca, where he would play a rhythm and challenge listeners to guess its origin. He immersed himself in Brazilian samba, joining a school called Os Farsantes de Copacabana, which translates wonderfully to fakers.
The fakers of Copacabana. Perfect.
He even played paid gigs, noting with amusement his foreign accent in rhythm, but his dedication to understanding and performing these complex musical forms was complete. It's another example of his deep dive into a new domain, learning it from the inside out.
And he even had brief but significant forays into biology, didn't he? Another field far removed from his core expertise.
He did. He pursued experiments in genetics, specifically researching back mutations in DNA, which was quite cutting edge for a physicist jumping in. He even discovered a phenomenon that was later formally named intragenic suppression, which his lab friends affectionately dubbed Feintrons.
Feintrons, love it.
However, in a candid admission of his amateur status in a new field, he later recounted a stupid and sloppy mistake of using infected ribosomes in his experiments.
Costly mistake.
Unfortunately, yes. This error prevented him and his colleague from being the first to demonstrate the uniformity of life, the groundbreaking discovery that the fundamental machinery for making proteins is the same in every single creature on Earth. It's a testament to his humility and commitment to the scientific method. even when it revealed his own missteps.
That's classic Feynman. Incredibly insightful, but also honest about his mistakes and limitations. He also conducted some unique experiments on himself, didn't he? Exploring the very nature of consciousness.
He was a lifelong self-experimenter, constantly trying to understand the inner workings of his own mind. He meticulously tried to observe his consciousness unraveling while falling asleep, following his thoughts as they frayed apart.
Watching himself fall asleep. How would you even do that?
That was the challenge. He also had more adventurous forays into sensory deprivation tanks with the neuroscientist John Lilly, seeking to understand the influence of pre-existing thoughts on hallucinations.
Sensory deprivation tanks. Back then.
Yeah, with John Lilly, a pioneer in that area. These experiments led to vivid out-of-body experiences and profound insights into how memories are stored in the brain. While intensely curious about LSD and its effects, he was ultimately reluctant to try experiments with LSD because, as he put it, he didn't want to destroy this most pleasant machine that makes life such a big kick. He valued his mind too much to risk it.
That deep dive into his own consciousness is a perfect segue to the inevitable recognition he received later in life, the Nobel Prize. He received it in physics in 1965, shared with Tominaga and Schwinger. Yet his reaction to it was typically understated, almost dismissive.
It was inevitable given his revolutionary work on QED, but true to form, while acknowledging the award, he felt he had merely shoved a great problem under the carpet.
Still sticking to that idea.
Yes, this speaks volumes about his incredibly high standard for what constituted true understanding. For him, a Nobel Prize was for a practical solution, but not necessarily for absolute fundamental comprehension of the universe. He was never satisfied with mere answers if the underlying mystery remained.
And then came the price of fame. How did this newfound celebrity impact his life?
He was genuinely shocked by his newfound celebrity. It brought incessant media attention from Time magazine, newspapers, even the Swedish consulate, all wanting a piece of the Nobel laureate.
The spotlight found him.
It did. He felt like a big shot and found the constant interviews pointless and distracting. He famously stated with characteristic bluntness that he came to talk to the physics students and that's it. The public attention was a burden that disrupted his life and took him away from what he truly loved, doing physics and thinking deeply.
His best-selling autobiography, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, further amplified his public image, often portraying him as this quirky, almost larger-than-life character. But that book also drew some criticism, didn't it?
It did. Co-authored with Ralph Layton, the book certainly shattered the stereotype of the stuffy scientist, presenting a vibrant, irreverent, and deeply human genius. It became a bestseller and introduced Feynman to a much wider audience.
Everyone seemed to read that book.
Pretty much. However, it also drew criticism, notably from his colleague Murray Gell-Mann, who felt Feynman spent a great deal of his effort generating anecdotes about himself, and somewhat controversially, suggested that the book was ghostwritten by Layton.
Ooh, controversy.
This highlights the tension between his flamboyant public persona and the views of some of his more conservative peers, who perhaps saw his storytelling as a distraction from the gravitas of his scientific contributions.
Despite some of those criticisms, one of his most impactful public services came later in his life, and it perfectly encapsulates his dedication to scientific integrity. His pivotal role in the Rogers Commission investigation into the 1986 Space Shuttle Challenger disaster.
This was a defining moment for him publicly. He famously and dramatically used an O-ring sample, a critical component from the shuttle, and a simple glass of ice water.
The ice water experiment. Remember that.
Exactly. He used it to demonstrate how the material lost its resilience at low temperatures. This clear, undeniable, and easily understandable demonstration directly contradicted NASA's initial testimony and made the true cause of the disaster horrifyingly clear to the public. It was a masterclass in communicating complex scientific failure in an accessible way.
And his independent inquiry went beyond just the O-rings, didn't it?
Yeah.
He dug deeper into the systemic issues within NASA.
He did. His relentless independent inquiry, which he detailed in his appendix to the report, his personal observations on reliability, revealed a profound disconnect within NASA.
A disconnect. How so?
Engineers who understood and voiced the risks were often ignored, and managers downplayed those risks under pressure. This underscored his unwavering commitment to utter honesty in science, regardless of the political or institutional consequences. He exposed a culture where concerns were silenced and facts were obscured, proving that scientific integrity must extend beyond the lab into every aspect of public endeavor.
This unwavering commitment to truth brings us to our final segment, Philosophical Foundations and Enduring Legacy, which truly encapsulates the essence of Richard Feynman. He had a core philosophical belief that embraced ignorance and doubt, which seems counterintuitive for a scientist.
It does, doesn't it? But it was fundamental to his approach. He held a core philosophical belief that the scientist has a lot of experience with ignorance and doubt and uncertainty. For Feynman, it is possible to live and not know.
Live and not know.
This contrasts sharply with traditional views of knowledge and certainty, which often aim to eliminate doubt. For him, doubt was not a weakness, but a necessary condition for true scientific exploration.
He even articulated what he called a satisfactory philosophy of ignorance. What did he mean by that?
He asserted that doubt is not to be feared, but welcomed, viewing it as an incredibly powerful tool for scientific advancement, rather than a weakness to be overcome. He argued that precision should be reserved for when doubt arises, because that's precisely when new knowledge is waiting to be discovered. This perspective truly empowered scientists to explore the unknown without the fear of being wrong, turning uncertainty into a fertile ground for inquiry. It freed him from the need to always be right and allowed him to constantly question.
This perspective also informed his unconventional decision to, as he put it, refuse to read the current literature or reinvent the wheel. Why did he choose to work problems out for himself from first principles, even if it meant being seen as cranky?
He consciously chose this path because he preferred to work out problems for himself from first principles rather than relying on what others had already done, while sometimes seen as selfish or cranky by his colleagues.
I can imagine some frustration there.
Oh, definitely. But this was his way of protecting what he called his holy curiosity of inquiry and the freedom essential for truly creative thought. He believed that constant engagement with existing literature could stifle original thought, making one unconsciously follow established paths. He wanted to forge his own.
What's fascinating here is how his worldview extended beyond just his scientific methodology to encompass broader questions about science, religion, and the very concept of genius.
Crucially, this meant he defined science not as a body of facts, but as a process of continuous doubt and investigation, ab initio, from experience. He saw it as an evolution from simple learning to a uniquely human capacity to challenge inherited knowledge, emphasizing constant observation, questioning, and reevaluation. For him, science was a verb, an ongoing process of discovery, not a static dogma.
And he had a very strong critique of traditional religion, didn't he?
He did. He firmly believed that science and religion are natural adversaries. He openly repudiated the conventional God, seeing anthropomorphic conceptions of a deity as implausible in the less and less human-centered universe discovered by science. For Feynman, the beauty and complexity of the universe, as revealed by scientific inquiry, were far more awe-inspiring than any traditional religious explanation.
And finally, his perspective on genius itself. He reflected on the dissection of Einstein's brain, which he felt was a futile search for a corporeal basis for talent. How did he view genius?
Feynman suggested that genius might be less about some quantifiable inherent quality found in the brain's physical structure and more about an unconventional approach, an extraordinary persistence in inquiry, and a willingness to explore questions from entirely new angles.
So it's not just about brain structure.
Not necessarily. He noted the historical link between genius and madness, implying that creative breakthroughs often come from crooked roads without improvement, from thinking differently, outside the established norms, and constantly challenging conventional wisdom, even his own.
So what does this all mean for us, the listener? His enduring legacy isn't just in quantum physics. It's also in how he approached learning and teaching, a methodology we can all apply.
Precisely. The Feynman technique for learning is a practical distillation of his approach to understanding, and it's something you, the listener, can apply directly. It involves 4 key steps. 1, write the name of a concept you want to understand at the top of a blank page. 2, explain it in plain English as if you were teaching it to a child, simplifying everything you know.
Teach it to a child. Okay.
3, identify any gaps in your knowledge where your explanation falters. Return to your sources and simplify your understanding further. And 4, use analogies and diagrams to deepen your understanding and aid memory.
Find the gaps, simplify, use analogies. Makes sense.
This technique emphasizes his core belief that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. It forces you to truly grasp the fundamentals.
And his impact on education, particularly through the Feynman lectures on physics, is undeniable. There's still a benchmark for clarity and depth.
Absolutely. The Feynman lectures on physics offer a deep, fundamental, and intuitive way to understand physics. His unique lecture style, famously described as an impossible combination of theoretical physicist and circus barker.
Yeah, circus bark.
That's the description. It brought an unparalleled personality and clarity to complex subjects. He didn't just convey information, he ignited curiosity and made physics alive, accessible, and profoundly engaging for generations of students.
Richard Feynman was a truly complex persona, famously described by some as a charming asshole for his bluntness and ego, who also embodied unwavering scientific integrity and a deep, almost spiritual love for unraveling nature's mysteries. His life reminds us that true understanding often comes not from finding easy answers, but from relentlessly questioning everything, embracing doubt, and finding the sheer joy of discovery in the process itself.
And his life story makes us wonder, in a world inundated with information where we're constantly striving for certainty, can we truly embrace Feynman's satisfactory philosophy of ignorance? Can we find liberation in the act of not knowing, allowing that doubt to fuel our curiosity and drive new, unexpected discoveries in our own lives, just as it did for him?
A profound thought indeed. Thank you for diving deep with us today.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to All in All.